So the last few weeks we've been going over how to teach your dog to do a find it behavior, which is that put your nose down, sniff around, and find something. This is a really handy, quick behavior a lot of dogs do naturally anyway. So why don't we use that for our fearful or reactive dogs to give them something to do other than other behaviors they might currently be doing, lunging, barking, trying to run back home, that we don't like so much. So the last 2 weeks we practiced in the videos, which you haven't seen, you can find them on our blog. It's dogkindtraining.com/blog. We've started by teaching the behavior in the house and yard, as we do for many new behaviors. And then we kind of edged it out toward the sidewalk when it was quiet. And now this week we're finally starting to incorporate triggers, which is a term people use sometimes to refer to whatever those things are that trigger your dog's fearful or aggressive behavior. So I'm going to pop into this video from this week. This just went live. Put myself out of the way a little bit. This just went live on our YouTube channel and in the blog a couple of hours ago. And we're going to take a look at what to do now if your dog is able to find it. So put their nose down and search. When you say find it, even if they didn't see you throw a treat, outside of your yard, so on the sidewalk, when there's nothing going on, that's where you want to be before you start trying to use it around triggers. I write about this more in today's blog, but the hardest part, as many of you have expressed in the group, of teaching your dog to do some new behavior other than barking, lunging, running away, is actually getting them to do it when you want them to do it, when it counts, when there are other dogs, skateboarders, bikes, whatever. So it's easy at home, and that's why we start there. We want it to be easy. But how do we go from there to out with dogs or other triggers? It's a huge jump in difficulty. So what I'm going to talk about today and show you in this video is how to make that jump a little smaller. And these videos are with a real reactive dog. Okay, so now that your dog can find it on the sidewalk, in the absence of triggers, so this is one of our client dogs who's a little bit reactive. So here Rachel is helping, this is Sydney, helping Sydney find it, gesturing to where she tossed the treat, and this is a quiet time, so no triggers around at the moment. If you've been following along with this training, you'll remember that you say find it after the treat hits the ground, because we want that find it to mean there's something to find now. Okay, so now we are going to move to working with triggers. So as with anything, in this video we're recommending you start close to home. Now, if your home area is crazy busy, like you're in a big city and there's a lot of stuff going on, maybe you don't want to start close to home. Maybe you need to get in the car or drive outside of town to do this in a way that your dog can handle. So this is just a suggestion for people that live in an environment where your dog could do it if you set up the environment just right. So I'll show you what we did here with Coco, Rachel, one of our Rachel's, Team Rachel's dog. So here we're starting in the backyard. So Coco has already practiced the find it behavior in the backyard with the gate closed. And then last week, as you saw, she started to learn how to do it with the gate open, but without much going on outside and kind of, farther back from the gate. Here we're going to start now waiting until she sees a trigger before doing cueing the find it behavior. So here's a biker. So Coco is reactive to a lot of things. People, dogs, people with dogs, dogs without people. So here she's going to see a bike, and see that timing, which is why I love being able to go over these with you guys in this group, is because I can't get into quite this much detail in these little YouTube videos. But she's waiting to this moment here. You see that Coco is orienting. She's looking at that biker. And I guarantee, although we can't see Rachel's head, that she is watching Coco closely and seeing that moment when Coco says, "Ooh, what's that?" And notice the placement of the treat behind her, so she's going to turn away from where that trigger was. If you have a reactive dog who barks and lunges, they already make the choice to go toward the trigger, and we'd like them to not do that. So this is developing, we're rewarding turning away and putting your head down to find the treat. Oh, I also say, by the way, start in the yard or indoors. That indoors, if you don't have a yard, can be with your front door open or a screen door, where you can see stuff outside, but your dog's not like really immersed in the outdoor environment. So she waits. Oh, there's a person. See that nice orientation? I froze it here. Tosses the treat, then says find it, away from the trigger. Ooh, a dog. So she does a really quick glance there, and that was really nice patience on Rachel's part, because Coco is much more reactive to dogs than people. And she could have kind of panicked and be like, oh my God, a dog, and tighten the leash and try to pull her away. But instead, she got this beautiful learning opportunity. Because Coco was already kind of engaged in sniffing, her attention was a bit divided, but she did, look up, a dog, and she took advantage of that moment. It was beautiful to say, okay, we're going to do that behavior because that's when I want you to use it, instead of lunging and barking at dogs. She looks. This is a good one for everyone to look at. So, despite your best planning, sometimes your dog will tell you, this is too hard right now. So she says find it, and Coco remains kind of staring at the person passing by. So we're going to show you what to do. So she's waiting. She's not tugging on the leash to try to get Coco's attention. Now, if this were a risky situation where, say, there was a loose dog running up to her, abort mission, pull the dog back, slam the gate. That's totally different. But here she has, a pretty safe setup. She's in the yard. She's got the dog on leash. That person is not approaching. So she's taking this time and saying, okay, I'm going to give you a chance to get this right. I'll just make some encouraging noises.
Good job.
Let me just get rid of this extra overlay. There we go. So she did do it, and then she still got the treat. So another example, she does not tighten the leash. She doesn't repeat the find it cue. She just waits until she gets it right. And another nice one, away from the trigger. Okay, so in this first stage, you're just finding where your dog can do this. Like at what level of trigger exposure can your dog do this behavior? Now remember, they're not going to be able to do this if you haven't already developed a pretty solid find it behavior in complete absence of triggers in a few different locations. So in our training videos, we show house, backyard, driveway, front yard. So Coco already has that under her belt before we start this work with triggers. And for Coco, this worked well, being in the yard and looking out the gate. I think it may feel a bit protected. I'm totally projecting what Coco might be thinking, but there's sometimes a parked car there that kind of limits visibility, and she's got the fences around her. So you can think about that when you are deciding where you want to start training with your reactive dog. Maybe in the house is better, just looking out a window or a door. Once your dog can do this find it behavior with triggers at whatever the lowest level trigger you can come up with is, now you can increase difficulty slowly. Ooh, so there's someone on the same side of the street. That's a lot closer. She does her find it behavior. By the way, this is a helper who is doing this walking back and forth and being a trigger person for Coco. This is something you can think about also if you say, well, I only have, 15 minutes today. I'd like to do a little training, but what if nobody goes by if you're in a quieter neighborhood? So if you can get a friend, maybe a friend with a dog, if dogs are one of your dog's triggers, to walk by on probably the other side of the street to start. then you can get more repetitions in if you have a limited amount of time to train. Okay, now we're venturing out of the yard. So this is actually a pretty big deal for a lot of dogs. You're no longer in the yard. You're a little more exposed. And you see with the Find It, Rachel is moving Coco back toward the yard.
Good girl.
That's a great way to limit the intensity of the experience for your dog. If they feel kind of nervous, you're like, okay, maybe that was a little much. We're going to run right back into our safety zone, into the yard. So this didn't happen overnight, but Coco's working her way down the driveway. And this street is actually relatively busy for our town. A lot of bikers, a fair number of dog walkers. So you'll see that Rachel is usually tossing the treat up the driveway away from the triggers. And sometimes there's a lot going on. And so you might end up doing several Find It's in a row here.
Find it. Find it.
And see this nice loose leash? Loose leash? You see a lot of bikers and a walker. Oh my God. Okay. Let's do a few up the driveway. But Coco handled that like a champ. You may look into, if you haven't already, I don't know how well you can see it in this video, but Rachel has a leash belt around her waist with the leash looped through it. That is one way to help you not tug on the leash because it's not in your hands. For better safety, really, I would prefer 2 leashes. So one that is on a leash belt and another in your hand, so that there's a backup if your dog were to lunge and that leash got ripped out of your hand. But I do really like these waist leashes. They're really handy. Okay. Okay, so once your dog is able to do this Find It behavior sort of in your home environment, maybe, when you're on the driveway, you still have the option of fleeing back to the house or yard, which is really nice, both for you and both for your dog and for your own stress level, because I know when you're working with a reactive dog, you always have that kind of heightened stress where you're like, okay, is something going to go wrong, looking for trouble. So you want to build some confidence, not just for your dog, but for yourself. So you feel, okay, I've got it down, I've got my mechanics down, my dog can do it. And then we'll start maybe trying some different locations. Okay, so on walks, the trouble with walks, really anywhere outside, of course, triggers can appear unpredictably, but if you're working in front of your house and you have a pretty good visibility to both sides, you're less likely to be surprised by, it still could happen, but less likely. So here we put together a few tips for starting to work away from home, where that will kind of minimize or reduce the risk that you will have a stressful event happening. This next video is Bea, who's one of our client dogs, and we were hired to work on her reactivity toward dogs and squirrels. And you can see as we're just getting into this video here, they chose to drive to a park, so it's pretty wide open space. They can see in all directions, and I don't know if you can see on the far over here. I actually don't know if you can see my mouse, but the far left, there's someone walking a dog. So Bea is going to be able to see a trigger at a pretty far, pretty great distance here. So Jack is doing a great job watching carefully, and then you see how big and obvious that throwing motion was? So he's going to do it again here, I think. There's a bike. He's kind of like, look over here, okay, toss the treat. That can be a help when you first start moving into more difficult locations. Often when you increase difficulty in one area of your training, you're going to have to make something else easier. So while in the backyard, we were doing these sneaky tosses, like behind you, and you're like, oh, find it, and they didn't see you toss it. We want to do that so that their response to the Find It cue is strong. But now when you move out into the world and it's a lot harder for them, it's not a bad idea to make the cue or a prompt like that big throwing motion more obvious for them, so they're more likely to get it right. So here now Bea is, I'm going to move myself again, there's going to be a dog right, that might be it there, but just much closer than the previous one, right across the street. So, yep, he put the treat right in front of her face, like, treat, and tossed it behind her. And what I really love to see at the end of this training, oh, well, we'll see it in a second. So just to reiterate, these examples are ways to help your dog get it right when you're moving into a more difficult environment, more triggers. So big, obvious, oops, sorry, went too far. Those big, obvious tosses. Look, over here. Away from the bike. Away from the dog. Okay. Another tip for using Find It on walks is to there are a couple ways you can do this to get more duration. Say if a trigger is taking its sweet time getting past you. A couple things you can do. You can do a single Find It, but do a big treat scatter when you say Find It, so your dog has a lot of finding it to do. Takes them a while to vacuum up the treats. This is an example of just doing back-to-back Find It's when a dog is passing by and it's taking a little while. So here, Pepper, you see the little dog here, Pepper sees this German Shepherd coming out from behind the parked truck across the street. She's been working on this a while, so says Find It, drop some treats, does another Find It, does another one just in case because the dog's still passing by. So that can help you through those moments where you're like, okay, the dog's still there or whatever. Something to keep it going. So this last example is kind of a little bit of inspiration, hopefully, for all of you out there that are struggling with this, with having a reactive or fearful dog out on walks. I think this is only Bea's second training session using Find It that I am aware of. My team does her training. But you will see her here see the dog, and then before the trainer can cue anything, turn on her own away and start sniffing. So here there's a dog across the street. She sees it and she's like, you know what? I'm gonna just go sniff over here. So if you're really consistent, really with any of these alternative behaviors, every time they see their trigger, you cue this new behavior. What we do in our online reactive dog training class is actually practice this in a very safe environment where we let the dog see the trigger, and after we practiced a lot of times, see the trigger, mom or dad cues the dog to look at them or to move away, whatever. They do the behavior, they get the reward. Do that over and over again, and then say, okay, now let's try it. Let's let them see the trigger, and let's just wait and see if they offer that behavior that we've been working on. And most of the time they do. They see the trigger, there's no cue. Aren't they supposed to get a treat here? They turn and look at mom or dad. And then you've started on your way to transferring the cue for the behavior from you giving a verbal cue, although you still have that if you need it, to the sight of the trigger, which is much nicer for both you and the dog.